Hi everyone, it's Cassandra with Bite Size. AI is transforming industries across the globe, but what happens when innovation collides with heavy regulation? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of AI in highly regulated industries like healthcare and energy. Joining us again is Rajan, a seasoned leader with over 20 years of consulting and industry experience and a deep understanding of what it takes to balance cutting edge technologies with complex compliance. Let's explore how organizations can navigate this tricky terrain and still unlock this incredible potential of AI. So, Rajan, thanks again for joining us again. It's been some time since we last spoke, and spring is finally here. So, I hope your garden is blooming or starting to see some buds in it.
Thank you for having me, Cass. Yeah, absolutely excited to be part of this conversation. Yes, spring is blooming and flowers are blooming in the garden, and see already some small fruits on the fruit trees as well.
All right, but we can have a whole episode about gardening tips, which I hope
Of
we'll have
course.
one day in the future. But today, let's talk about AI and the industries that we're in. So, given your background in highly regulated industries, what are some common challenges organizations face when trying to adopt AI?
Yeah, before I start, I just want to put a disclaimer out there for everyone that I am not an expert in AI by any means, right? And although I'm an avid consumer of AI related materials and information and applications in various sectors, I'm starting to dabble a little bit with AI for my own personal use, of course. But don't quote me for anything that I say here, which is right or wrong. But it may seem incorrect to some people. But I'll just say that, from a regulatory standpoint, there's quite a few things that organizations face when it comes to challenges, right? One is, the regulation itself is evolving because a lot of people are learning about what this AI is all about, how does it work, what should we do, what should we not do, and geographies around the world are putting their own spin on what it means for them within their region and what will work and what will not. And so it's an evolving technology, I would say, more rapidly evolving than anything else that I've seen before. And then how do we interpret and apply that in our own organizations and for whatever we do within the organizations, whether it's designed for a human interaction or machine to machine interaction or whatever that may be, how do we really apply that in the world of AI? That's one area. The other one is data and data security, because AI involves a lot of learning about systems and there's a lot of data interchange that happens. And so there's a lot of concern about, okay, whether something is sensitive data, that is, regulated data, it's data about people, it's data about our financials and, our personal data and health data and whatnot, right? So AI models require a lot of learning with the data for what they need to do. But then how does this data that we feed it get consumed by the model and what does it do with it? So there are concerns about that. And then the security aspect of it so that the right people with the right access have the right, data they need for the job they need to do with it. And that it is not going into any, unauthorized uses by unauthorized people. So there are those kind of, challenges as well. And thirdly, I'll say then there is also, how do we implement a governing structure around the use of AI, the use of data in organizations. So that's the third challenge that I see a lot of times organizations discussing about.
Yeah, and I definitely can relate to the sensitivity bits, right? Like, especially with PPI or personal, identification, that's always very sensitive. You don't want release, and then of course, each of our companies might have trade secrets, right? And they don't want make
Of
want that to
course.
be released out into the public. So, following that conversation, so what practical steps can an org take to ensure that AI initiatives align with these regulatory requirements while still driving innovation?
Yeah, when you talk about innovation, I think one of the things that is critical for many organizations to think about is how do they invest in training their organization with this new technology called AI? What does it mean? How do you apply it? Not only training the technical people about it, but also the business people, the legal people, the risk and compliance people. Everyone needs to know what it does and what it doesn't, so that we can be more informed about the decisions we make in the organizations, and that it really helps them create an opportunity for people to think of, oh, I can use AI for this
Mhm.
business problem that I need to solve, right? So then it helps create that innovation engine when everybody's more familiar with the AI technology itself. The second part I would say is, in terms of the governance policies are, the privacy policies are going to be within the organization. We want organizations to be clear about it. And like I said, with the challenges before, it's an emerging landscape. It's evolving as we speak. So what we put in place now may change maybe in 6 months or a year from now. So how do we really create that the policies that we create for what can AI be used for, what can it not be used for, what should we do with the data, how does the data get transformed from one system to another system, what happens during that process. So all of that I think is another important aspect. And lastly, how do we create a culture of responsible and ethical use of AI? I think that's a critical piece because you don't want people to do bad things with it, right? So having governance around it and a clear policy within the organization about responsible and ethical use of AI, I think is going to be another key one.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up good points, right? As you said, first people, both sides, not just the technical people leveraging the tools, but it's important that our business and other legal and enterprise teams are involved. So I really appreciate that. And as you mentioned, the second thing is like the policies and of course that ethical data use. So very good things that you've shared there. So looking at the future, how do you see the regulatory landscape evolving, and what should orgs be doing today to stay ahead?
Like I said, it's an evolving landscape from a regulatory standpoint. Rules are changing, governments change, the environment around which different regions of the world, like the European Union, for example, it has a different set of policies and rules that they have versus in other parts of the world. So I think what we want to see organizations do is see how can they learn about these changes in governmental rules and policies and regulations and have somebody really focus on that part, and then how can they create more transparency around what are these regulators doing and what should we know internally as an organization when regulations change. How does it impact our business? How does it impact the use of AI within our business to solve our business problems? Also, how do we solve customer problems with AI, and what kind of regulatory impact does it have, right? I mean, having that kind of perspective, I think is an important thing that organizations should spend time in doing. And more importantly, I would say also look into what kind of standards you want to establish within your own organization about how and where not AI can or cannot be used and for what purposes. Like I mentioned before, the ethical and responsible use of AI, I think is going to be critical for any organization. So having that kind of a policy and a posture, creating transparency about it, doing active research about those topics, and then lastly, investing again. I'll re-emphasize the training bit because this is so key and it's a fast evolving technology. If you look at the uh, public availability of this AI technology in the last couple of years, and the adoption in the last 2 years has been so ginormous that, by the time we think about something new that we want to do with it, people are, seeing, hey, there's another model available, another version available that is
Mhm.
trained for a different use case. So how do we learn and how do we leverage that? And investing in the training piece, I think is going to be so crucial for organizations. Because if we don't learn at the speed, well, we may not learn at the same speed at which it is evolving, but keeping, pace with the learning and continuous adaptation of that and then experimenting with it. What can we do? What problems can it solve? How do we use that for solving different types of problems, whether internal or external? I think it's going to be important.
Well said, Rajan. Well said. So essentially, long story short, a company should look inwards first a little bit, right? Understand what problems it wants to solve. Why are they trying to leverage this, and making sure that they train and take the time to train their folks, or give that space to train their folks in some way. And then, as you mentioned, and then also develop the policies, how we're going to leverage the data, how do we keep it safe, and how we keep our people safe. And then I think the other aspect of this conversation is look outward, right? You don't make sure you don't have your blinders on. You forget that the space is rapidly evolving, and so leveraging your networks, news articles, listening to government regulation. Whether it's a group within your organization that's paying attention, or you yourself listening to that. Those are the two aspects of it. So look internally, grow your people, and then of course always stay abreast in that. But so there you have it. That's our episode today about how to leverage AI in a highly regulated environment. We're so happy that we had Rajan join us. So thanks for listening to Bite Size, y'all. Cheers.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.